Our movie today starts with biomedical engineer Dr. Ryan Stone. Dr. Stone is a mission specialist and she's aboard the STS-157 Explorer on her first space shuttle mission. We see her on a spacewalk repairing a panel on the Hubble Space Telescope, and she's accompanied by veteran astronaut Matt, who's leading his final mission. Matt's a very gabby, talkative guy, and he keeps telling stories after stories while also trying to flirt with Ryan by guessing her eye color. As this was going on and things were calm, all of a sudden, Mission Control instructs them to abort their mission and return to Earth immediately. Mission Control tells them that debris, which was accidentally caused by a Russian missile strike on their own satellite, has caused a chain reaction, destroying other satellites, and this debris is also rapidly coming toward them. We see them losing communication with Houston shortly after the comm satellites were destroyed. Matt orders Ryan to get back to the STS, and she finishes fixing the telescope, but before she could get back to the STS, debris traveling in high speed strikes the STS and the Hubble telescopes. This impact cuts off Ryan's rope and she spirals away from the STS Explorer. Matt calls for her, but she can't give him her location as she's spinning very fast and can't locate the STS. She starts to panic and takes heavy breaths, depleting her oxygen tank. But soon, the spinning slows down and she sees the STS, and she sends Matt her location relative to the STS and the telescope, but there's no response and she starts drifting away. But then Matt, who's wearing a thruster pack, suddenly appears and attaches her rope to him, and he takes her back to the STS. But when they get back, they discover that the Explorer has been destroyed and all the crew members are dead. And Matt comes up with a plan to use his thruster pack to drift to the ISS, the International Space Station, to get an escape pod. And Ryan doesn't really think she can make it since her oxygen pack is at 10% and the ISS is 1,400 kilometers away.
Wait, hold on. Did you subscribe to our channel? Come on guys, you're here, you're watching the video. Help us out by hitting the subscribe button, as it really helps out me and my team to make more videos for you guys. And now, let's get back to the recap.
Matt tries to calm her down and reassures her that they will make it to the ISS in time before her oxygen runs out. As they travel, Matt asks her a bunch of questions to distract her. Questions like where she's from and what she likes to do back on Earth, and Ryan answers saying that she's from Illinois and what she likes to do on Earth is driving at night. She also talks about her 4-year-old daughter after Matt asked her if she had anybody special back on Earth. She tells him about her daughter, but apparently her daughter died while she was playing tag at school. At this point, they've almost reached the ISS, but her oxygen is at 2%. Matt notices the first escape pod is missing and figures the ISS crew must have used it to evacuate the station. Seeing that the second escape pod is useless, Ryan starts to lose hope as she's also losing oxygen and Matt's thrusters is running out of fuel. But Matt comes up with another idea. He suggests that they can use the escape pod to travel to the Chinese space station, which is 100 kilometers away, and use their spacecraft to return to Earth. But just as they got to the ISS, Matt's thrusters run out of fuel and they start to spin uncontrollably. They grab onto the ISS, but their rope is broken by the solar panel and they're flung away. Ryan's foot gets caught by one of the escape pod's parachute lines and she manages to grab Matt's rope, stopping him from drifting away. But Matt realizes that his momentum will drift both of them away from the ISS, and he tells Ryan to save herself, but she refuses to let go of his rope. Because of Matt's momentum, Ryan starts getting pulled toward him, and instead of letting both of them die, Matt cuts off his rope and saves Ryan as he floats away. This was a very emotional scene. Ryan screams, "No!" But there's nothing she can do about it because this was the only way. And she promises him to get him back once she manages to get to the escape pod. Over the radio, Matt tells Ryan where to find the escape pod and where the Chinese space station is located. Ryan tells him that she's very bad at driving the module and that she crashed every time while training in a simulation. But Matt encourages her and tells her that she can do it, and if she doesn't, they're both gonna end up dead. Matt still manages to ask her if she's attracted to him, and as she was telling him that he has beautiful eyes, Matt's voice disappears and he dies and drifts away. Ryan manages to enter the ISS through the airlock and she gets out of her spacesuit and takes a very deep breath. She then looks around the ship and she finds the comms room. She contacts Matt's radio and she asks him to give her his location, but she doesn't get any response. She begs him to say something, but there's still no response from Matt. And it's here that Ryan realizes that Matt is dead. She then starts to message Houston back back on Earth. As she was sending the message, suddenly, a fire alarm rings inside the ship, and she grabs a fire extinguisher and goes to the room where the fire is. She then tries to put out the fire, but she's pushed back by the fire extinguisher and momentarily knocked out. She wakes up after a few seconds and uses the fire extinguisher as a thruster to get to the escape pod, and she closes the door just before the fire gets to her. She then undocks the escape pod using a manual of the ship, but as she separates from the ISS, she finds out that the pod's parachute is entangled in the ISS riggings, preventing it from leaving. She puts on a spacesuit she found inside the pod and performs a spacewalk to cut off the cables. She succeeds in releasing the pod, but she sees debris coming to her at a very high speed, and so she rushes to her pod and drives it away as the debris destroys the ISS. She then aligns her pod to the Chinese space station's coordinates and drives to it. After she traveled a little distance, the pod stops moving and she discovers that the pod is out of fuel. She starts to freak out and starts pressing every button she can find, but to no success, and she sends another blind message to Houston, hoping that they pick up her signal. And instead of picking up Mission Control Houston, she picks up some random guy on a radio frequency. She tries to talk to the man and begs him for help, but they don't speak the same language. Out of frustration, Ryan starts crying and asks the man to pray for her. Accepting that she's going to die, Ryan stops crying and slows down her oxygen intake, and she falls asleep listening to the man sing a lullaby for his child. And as she was beginning to lose consciousness, Matt suddenly knocks on her door, waking her up. He then opens the door and enters the pod. Ryan asks him how he's still alive, and he tells her that he found an extra battery in his thruster. He then searches for his vodka and has a sip, and he turns on the ship's power and prepares to drive to the Chinese station. Ryan stops him and tells him the pod is out of fuel and that there's no way to get to the Chinese space station. Matt then explains that she can use the pod's landing rocket to reach the station. Ryan argues that the rocket is used for landing and not for launching, but Matt tells her both processes are actually the same. He then asks her if she wants to live or die and tells her that she's giving up easily. And as he tells her that it's time to go back home, Ryan wakes up, revealing that this whole thing was just a hallucination she was having, and Matt is indeed still dead. Ryan turns the oxygen back on, and she remembers what Matt told her in her hallucination. Her will to live is now restored, and she reads the pod's manual and detaches the landing rocket from the rest of the pod. Ryan talks to herself and asks Matt for a favor. She describes her daughter Sarah to him, and she asks him to give her a big hug and tell her that her mother misses her and that she will not quit trying to survive. After finishing her message, she enters the Chinese space station's coordinates and launches her pod to the location. She reaches the station, but she now doesn't have enough fuel to slow down or dock the pod on the Chinese station. So she jumps out of the pod and uses the remaining pressure in the fire extinguisher to use as a thruster, and she uses it to push herself onto the Chinese spaceship. Ryan almost misses the space station, but she manages to grab onto the tip of the station. She then gets inside the station and looks for the pod. After she found the pod and got inside, she encounters another problem because all the buttons are written in Mandarin. But this time, before panicking, she remembers what Matt told her about all pods being similar, and so she presses the buttons that are in the same position of the Soyuz escape pod, and she was lucky because she manages to turn it on. She then makes a bunch of blind guesses to detach the pod from the station, which also works. She also manages to send another blind message to Mission Control about what she's doing. As the pod falls toward Earth, Ryan separates her launching pad from the rest, and the pod burns as it passes through the Earth's atmosphere. The radio inside the pod starts to receive traffic from Mission Control, and Ryan receives a message from Houston telling her that the rescue team is on their way. The pod functions normally and deploys parachutes, and Ryan lands on a lake. But when she opens the pod's doors, water starts flooding in, and this time she starts to drown. Water starts to fill the pod and it starts to sink. But after the pressure stabilizes, Ryan takes off her spacesuit and manages to swim up to the surface. She then manages to swim to shore, and we see her looking happy because finally she's made it back home. And that is how this awesome movie comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed our recaps. Make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. I promise to you guys on my next recap. I love you all. Bye.